Okay, hi all. Welcome to a new semester of machine learning hockey seminars. And this time we will also have a full schedule. They are just not all in the web yet, but will be there. And this time we are starting with the topmost machine learning education expert, at least in Helsinki, soon in Europe, maybe in the whole world. Teemu Roos, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Sami, and also happy to see the room completely packed. It's good that they removed half of the chairs. So I also sort of look forward to the spring semester of this brilliant seminar, which Laura and Sami are chairing. So it's an honor to kick off. And we talked with Laura a bit about what I could talk about. And of course, I was eager to talk about our recent research work and all that kind of research side of things. But then we figured it's good to have also some educational or education topics in this seminar as well to kind of widen the scope and open up our thinking of what machine learning is about. So I thought I'd talk about the elements of AI, of course. Like I'm pretty sure that almost everybody has heard about it at some point sufficiently much, but I think I will be able to sort of not give the usual story this time. I'll give something like behind the scenes and sort of our thinking in the background of the whole thing. Like, how do I think machine learning and AI can also be taught? So this is not only about, it's really not so much about online education that I'm going to talk about. I mean, we don't really use much of intelligence, so to speak, in the platform. It's really more like pedagogical thinking that I'll be talking about. Yeah, and so okay, Sami introduced me, but just in case you missed it, my name is Teemu Roos, and I'm from the University of Helsinki, as you can see. So I'll talk about this thing here. Obviously, it's an online course, and I always sort of make a point to remind everyone that it's a joint initiative between the University of Helsinki and Reaktor. And if you don't know, Reaktor it's a private IT company or consultancy, and they're co-located. If you've been to Tiedekulma, they're the upper 3 floors of that building nowadays. They're housed in the same building as Tiedekulma downtown Helsinki. We've launched already more than 1.5 years ago, and we've got not only, of course, University of Helsinki and Reaktor were the organizations who implemented this thing, but we've had plenty of support from other organizations joining something what we call AI Challenge, where companies can kind of endorse this initiative of training their staff in the basics of AI. So 300 organizations in Finland and Sweden, and we'll be launching the AI Challenge in Germany this month. And we've got already companies also on board in Estonia. I'll get back to that a bit. Now we have, I think, 320,000 participants is the latest number. I forgot to look it up in the morning, maybe 330 from 170 countries. So I'm not sure like which countries are left. I don't remember, maybe there's like 200 countries in the world. So pretty much everything. And it's also one way in which we try and bring diversity into this field and sort of thinking about that every chance we have. It's not like we designed a course for women or for old people or people from who are different in some way than many of the people here, but we just designed it so that it's not restricted to a certain kind of way of thinking. And that seems to have worked because we've got 40% female users globally, and in fact in Finland and in Sweden it's more than 50% female. So in Finland I think I saw the number 57% female. So quite unusual. If you've taught machine learning or AI at universities, you'd know that it's nowhere near that balanced. And we've got people up to the age of 80 years old, so 80, who have completed the course and sort of been happy that they had a chance to sort of maybe revisit something that they might have studied earlier on, or to just like keep their brains, challenged and enjoyed that part of it, even though it's not going to be their work in some ways. So I'm showing this kind of things here in different languages. So this one would be in Finnish, as you can tell, and we've got the course in 4 different language versions right now. But about the content and the shape and form of the thing, it's about 30 hours to complete the whole thing. Probably, like if any of you would happen to go and start it, it would take significantly less, but this is sort of if you don't have any tech background. And it's not just like reading and an exam, but it's more like a continuous sequence of exercises embedded in the course, and those are the ones that are used to sort of decide whether you pass or not. And they're the classical multiple choice things, which I'm not a huge fan of, but they're convenient and they're kind of user friendly. There's some of them that require you enter a number, like there's even some probability calculations. There's the Bayes rule, and which we all love, don't we? So that's there, and people get to practice that a bit in a simple diagnostic scenario. And then there is something that I really, really like, some text answers. The course platform, the technical term for them on the course platform is an essay, but I don't want to use the term essay because that gives you the idea that it's like this A4, 3 or 4 A4s that you write with like nice handwriting and stuff. Like school, kind of high school essay thing, it's more like a text box where you type a paragraph or two. So I don't want to use the word essay because people kind of get anxious about that. They're just text answers, and they're peer reviewed, and that is the part that I like the most because then people also, our users really thank this feature because if you're like asked, how do you think AI is going to change your life? That's one of the questions. That's, I think, the last question in the whole course. And then it says, you should list positive and negative things, both in your private life and in your work. And then people get to reflect on like what they have learned. They can kind of speculate about how AI is going to change their work and their private life. And then once they've submitted their own answer, they get 3 other people's answers to review. And it's not really like, really like checking that it's correct, because such an answer cannot really be correct or incorrect, but it's just the review that is sufficiently well thought, and it's not like spam. Some people just write lol or just some scramble text, and then those will be rejected in the peer review. But then the point being there that the people that are reviewing other people's answers, they get to see the topic and the question from other people's points of view, and that's what many people really appreciate. Not only answering themselves, but really other people's answers. And technically, we are using the University of Helsinki CS department MOOC.fi kernel, so we call it now the kernel, because that's the kind of the back end, the user management, the handling of the exercises, the checking of the exercises, and granting the certificates. But for the front end, which sort of is a big part of the user experience, that's a kind of a custom-made thing for this course specifically, which took a lot of effort to do, and the design is mostly it's like completely by Reaktor. But the University of Helsinki and Reaktor, we kind of did the logic of the front end together. And we're now of course, we get a lot of questions from people like, could we use that platform? Could we put our courses on that? And we're sort of trying to see how we could make that work. We don't currently have the kind of manpower or the resources to offer that as a platform for others to use, but we'd really like to. and we kind of think that might be something we're able to go within this year. At least we'll know this year if we can open that up. And it would be nice in this sort of kernel is a nice one because it also handles programming exercises and is really like a very, very flexible thing. It can do much more than what your edX or other kind of publicly available platforms can. Right, so what's the kind of background and our thinking of why was this worthwhile in the end? So this is Suo, Kuokka ja Jussi in Finnish, this kind of Finnish literature reference. So in 2017, when we started thinking about this, what was the status? Okay, so as you all know, there's plenty of MOOCs in the world. There's good MOOCs and there are bad MOOCs. AI and machine learning and deep learning are really, really well covered. But the problem was that they're really mostly aimed at maybe like people like us who are familiar with programming and we know plenty of maths and basically like CS students or CS practitioners. And also I didn't really like the style and the kind of design of the courses. There are a lot of talking heads, like there's a video, like just I'm a talking head for anyone who is watching this stream now. And then there are also sort of, I mean, I do like homemade stuff, but sometimes it'd be nice if it's kind of a little bit more polished. So here's something that you might have seen, and I'm sort of, again, of course, not sort of complaining about stuff, but this is one style of doing stuff. Oh, do we have, by the way, audio here? Do I need to do something?
Yeah, it's moving now.
It's moving, but you can't hear anything, right? Well, you can pretend to be hearing Andrew Ng talking about, you know, theta transpose x giving logistic regression probabilities in his like very comforting and pleasant voice. Just pretend. So this is Andrew Ng's famous, excellent machine learning course, which we all love. But so this is not going to be something that attracts people's attention. Let's say for most people. Like for us, of course, yes. Like who doesn't like theta transpose x? But still, like it's not going to grab the attention of the people who are not already kind of in the choir. And then there is other stuff, which is briefly like hyped up, oversimplified bad things. So kind of, okay, that's an example of that. And let me see, since we missed the audio, it's saying something like, probably AI is going to become self-conscious and take over the world. And the problem there is that human dictators eventually die, but these computer things, they never die. You know, that's the point where he says that. And then, you know, they'll just completely rule the world. And then there's your Matrix reference saying like, oh, people in 2000s, early 2000s, they came up with this theory or this technology called AI, and Keanu Reeves is, oh, is that artificial intelligence? And then there's the suspense. So this is the other side of things. So there's all this technical mathematical stuff, and then there's this. So people can choose which way they understand AI. And we wanted to do something a little bit different. So what we've been thinking about, and what I've been thinking about for a long time, is that we shouldn't teach AI only when it's already kind of very narrowed down, sort of deep in the curriculum, in the master's level, where it usually is, but we should at least teach it at the bachelor level, so that people don't kind of already learn the kind of the wrong way of thinking about things. And even teaching this course for the second year students for 8 years now, I really have to start by sort of trying to help people unlearn this kind of matrix impression of what AI is. And even to some extent the understanding or the idea that AI is something extremely complicated and theoretical and mathematical. And then the sort of additional sort of block or the sort of building block we had at hand was that we had the platform, and there's people that we had that have plenty of experience on online education in that group. Like among others, of course, Arto Hellas, who I just met here at the corridor. He's just moved to this department here in Aalto. But also, of course, others like Matti Luukkainen and the guys. So we had this idea that, okay, well, maybe just take the course that I've been teaching for a long time, which tries to give this sort of easily approachable idea of AI, and we'll just split it into 4 parts. We'll take out the programming and the maths, and we'll keep the part that is kind of conceptual thinking of and sort of focused on understanding things rather than necessarily implementing them. And then do the second part on the maths and the coding. And then it looked like not a huge amount of work, so we weren't, and I wasn't too worried about doing that. And actually we kind of did part of that work, or I did part of that work by transforming the course that I'd been teaching for a while on the MOOC platform. So what we now teach at the University of Helsinki in terms of the first AI course is actually using the MOOC platform, but it's only for our own students. So the platform can of course be used even if it's not open or massive. It's just an online course, right? So that work had been done already, but then we sort of bumped into the people at Reaktor, and then there were other kind of incentives to do something more from the Finnish government was asking when they started the AI era or tekoälyaika national strategy. They asked from universities, could you provide something that is open to the public and accessible? And then we were just thinking about that, and then we happened to mention that to the people at Reaktor, and they said, okay, we could help you with that. So we thought, okay, well, maybe we'll do that. And we started thinking about the concept, and we had plenty of meetings about what is the concept, who is the target audience, what are they interested in, how could we kind of catch their attention, and what should we try and teach them? And so we ended up choosing the target audience in the way that all marketing people and communications people say that never do, but we did this, so we thought we'll just do it for everyone. And everybody says that's a terrible idea. And of course we didn't exactly do that, because we said that, okay, if somebody knows already a lot about AI, then probably this is not going to be so much useful for them. So we prioritized people who didn't know that yet, so it's not exactly everyone. And we thought about what is the concept then, what can we teach them, and we thought that, okay, the main thing is really digital skills. So helping people use technologies or be kind of users or be citizens in a society where AI is being used, and to form an informed opinion about what they like about it or what they don't like about it. And in the end, so the material ended up being rewritten and ended up being much more work than you think. Right, so what did it end up being in that case? This is the Estonian version, by the way. Mis on AI. Tehisintellekti, in case you're wondering what AI is in Estonian. Right, so but in English we've got chapters on what it is, what's the definition, what's the kind of philosophy of it, like Turing test and stuff like that. And then there's really classical stuff in search and games, and you could maybe call that optimization section or chapter. And then this is kind of my really sort of what I really wanted to push, or sort of We of course discussed with other people who like what should be there, and everybody basically said that don't put probability there. Everybody hates probability, but I stuck with that, and I sort of said that it's really important to make it applicable in the real world, and I think that I'm happy that I did that in the end. It's the part, of course, that sort of where we get like the highest amount of churn, so people drop off at the point where they need to do a bit of math with the probabilities. But still, like the ones who push forward, I think they're better off that being there. And then we've got like two chapters on. Well, I mean, probabilistic reasoning. We do already like Bayes' rule and naive Bayes, like the classical spam filter example. So that's already sort of going into machine learning, but then there's a whole section of machine learning and kind of another one on neural networks, which is kind of scratching the surface because we can't really do much of the maths, but it's just explaining and sort of maybe we're sort of preparing for the follow-up course where we'll talk more about neural networks. And then I really think like it's societal implications is one chapter in the end, but I always try and make a point that it shouldn't be a separate, like an afterthought. And you shouldn't sort of say that, oh, cool, that's AI, and now we're done with it. Oh, except I forgot we need to worry about ethics. So that's not the way I want to frame it. We do talk about societal implications from the beginning and throughout the sections. Like, for instance, there is lähinaapuriklassifikaattor. So that's the nearest neighbor classifier. And there we talk about filter bubbles. Because we say that, okay, you can recommend stuff to people by looking at their past browsing history or past purchase history or whatever, and you can get really pretty good recommendations for people to buy products or view some sort of online content. And if you do that, then people will be sort of ended up in these filter bubbles and only talking to people who are basically like-minded. And then there's a question where people have to think about, well, what harm could come out of that and so on. So societal implications are scattered throughout the course, but still we have a separate chapter to close up with and sort of end with that thought in people's heads, because that's the main thing. We really want to, like one thing I would really like to do is a study on whether we're achieving some impact with this. And I'm not thinking of sort of how many startup companies people have founded with this knowledge. I hope none, because I mean, with this knowledge, it's not clearly enough to do anything practical. But I'd like to see like some sort of like a barometer, like this questionnaire study or sort of poll on how people's attitudes to AI have changed. And the way I'd like it to change, if you draw this kind of diagram like negative, positive, if people sort of are really like against AI, it's going to be that like Elon Musk dystopian, like automatic dictator kind of thing. Or if it's like, oh, it's going to solve all our problems and we're going to make trillions of dollars, which is also what Elon Musk thinks, apparently. And then there's like, if people are sort of feeling like, this is my thing, this is really like what I'm focused on, this is important for me, and then at the other extreme they would think, oh, that's somebody else's thing, I'm not sort of not my cup of tea. I'm not an AI person, right? So if this is like how they're committed to it or not, and this is if they think positively or negatively, I'd really want people to move to the sort of activate them to think that this is their thing. I don't care if they think positively or negatively about it. Of course I don't want to think, sort of push them to think negatively, but I don't also want to say, oh, this is all good, you don't have to worry, go home and just, don't think about it, we experts will deal about it. I don't want to give people that attitude either. So I'd really want the final chapter to sort of activate people, and I'm not here to lecture or there to lecture people how they should feel about it. I'm just telling them they should feel about it and form an opinion and then be active. So that's the main sort of agenda that we have here. Yeah, I already mentioned that we're happy that we have a lot of like huge diversity in the user base, and I think part of that has been the style, which we thought about very carefully. We try and avoid using robots. If you Google for AI, if you do image search, on AI. That's actually also an exercise in the course. You will get these blue wire brains, 90%. And then maybe 6% or 7% or 8% are these like white shiny robots. And then 2% something meaningful. So we try and sort of at least help balance that and show not that. Also, I don't like using space. Like it's this like very classical tech engineering, space and gadgets and all that thing. I don't think that appeals to a wide basis of users. So we try and avoid that kind of very technical connotation that comes with like, astronauts and space. And this kind of tech bro sort of thing, like, oh yeah, we're like, what is it, code ninjas or warriors or stuff like that. That is known to be repulsive to many people. So we sort of keep the tone of voice very sort of approachable and not like that. And not the famous movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger is. I don't even say the word because I try to make people forget it, but I'm sure this is a terrible idea if I try and do that. And we like to sort of have more than, there's a couple blue things here, but that's not our choice. Twitter and Facebook and Yle have a blue logo, that's for sure, but like it's not all blue, that's the main thing. And I like to sort of say that if you're trying to show what AI means, then show the people to whom it means something. And that will give you a better impression of what is real AI. Real AI for real, what is it, for the real people or real world? Both and? Okay. So real AI for real people in the real world. Okay, that's the slogan, our slogan, right, of FCAI. So yes, people, and yes, everyday things, because that's where people encounter AI, not in some sort of robot that walks around in science fiction. Right. And as a kind of a general principle, I sort of always try to make things just challenging enough, because otherwise you won't learn. If it's too easy, of course, it's sort of you lose interest. If it's too hard, then of course you lose interest even faster. And one of the biggest challenges was that there's no face-to-face interaction in an online course, and we needed to somehow sort of challenge and sort of hook people into doing the course. The first thing is that you make it look interesting, so that they at least pay attention, and then once you've caught their attention, you need to sort of have them engage, and then they'll be activated. By the way, I'm doing a terrible job at engaging and activating you because I haven't asked a single question. This may be a bad. So I'm doing this on purpose, of course, so that you'd notice it. So we wanted to have the course kind of pleasant experience, but that doesn't always mean it's just like easy riding. It needs to be really challenging, and really what we want to have, expose people to problems where they can't sort of think about it and then write down the answer in 2 minutes. For many of them, you'd actually need a pen and paper to work it out, to get it right. And once I think the kind of the trick there is that if we get people to invest so much of their energy and their time that they will actually grab a piece of paper and work out something, and then that is kind of when they are hooked, because if we sort of invest some effort in something, then there's a psychological effect that we think that, okay, that must have been worthwhile. And that's kind of the sort of trick in making the exercises challenging enough. And then we also sort of did a kind of a calculated risk there. So some of the exercises are asking questions about, do you think this is AI? Or do you think it's just like statistics? And these questions are really like, there's no clear clear line. It's sort of really fuzzy. And people can have a justified opinion that is different from my opinion on that question. And then they will not get full points because it's a multiple choice thing. And it's just, it is what it is. And that comes, I think the first exercise is one of those. And it's really something that people come back to me on the online community and wherever and say, I disagreed on that. And I hate why my answer wasn't accepted. And that's something we could fix that. We could make it sort of more clear and easier so that everybody gets 100%. But I really want people to understand that it's not important that they get 100% right. It's important that they remember what it was about. And it's also sometimes important that they realize that things aren't black and white. They're kind of scales of gray. And I'm absolutely sure that a person who is really annoyed by not getting 100% goes on the online forum and says, I hate this course. It's wrong and I lose points because it's unclear. And then I go there and any of our instructors goes there and says, okay, well, the way we think about it, this, and what you're saying kind of makes sense. But then again, it's not about this 1 point that you lost. It's not, the course is not graded in the end. It's just like 50% of correctness is enough to get your certificate in the end. And we explain them that, and then every time that we've done that, people have been like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. I really appreciate your time that you answered, and I didn't really mean that I hate this course. Actually, I'm loving it. So every time it happens, and I'm absolutely sure, at least for myself, if I make a mistake, and if I sort of go and complain about that, and it turns out that there is a valid, if it doesn't bug me anymore after having a dialogue with somebody, I'm sure to remember that, because that kind of human dialogue is something that we remember. There's feelings, there's emotions, there's commitment, and that I remember those things like 100 times better than sort of getting something right the first time. And that's the calculated risk. We kind of expose people to getting annoyed by the course first and then sort of thinking about it a few more times and talking about it to other people. And that's how we sort of drill the thing so that they can't forget it even if they tried. Yeah, so that's the important thing. And that's my score. So I didn't even get 100% myself. So doesn't matter. I still got my certificate signed by myself. Right, and so as I said, the discussion forum is really important. We use Spectrum and more recently Reddit because Spectrum changed their login or sign-up policies, and we weren't happy with that. We've got 5,000 and more members, and usually when I look there's more than 100 people online on the system, so that's pretty crazy. It takes a lot of effort to sort of try and keep up to speed what's going on there, but that isn't really a problem that we can't always be there, like keeping an eye on what's going on, and in 5 minutes we'd say, well, this is the right answer. It's actually better, and I intentionally, if I go and see somebody has posted a question, like today, I intentionally don't answer that today. I'll maybe answer that tomorrow or the day after, because if the other students sort of step in and say, well, this is the way I thought about that, and then other people say, okay, that's good, but then I thought about this way. And that's usually a really like beautiful discussion follows from that. If I go there and say, well, this is the way it is, then it's end of story, and nobody wants to sort of start saying, I thought about it differently. So that really has worked very nicely. You might be wondering about my inspirational quotes. I'll explain at the end. Yeah, so this is an example of the forum, just I guess on Friday maybe. 144 members online. This is just the English version, 4,900, and there's others. Yeah, so this one, yeah, completed chapter 1. I didn't pretty good in the last test But even with that mistakes, I learned something else. So that's just an example. Yeah, there's somebody talking about the Hanoi Towers optimization thing. Pen and paper, that's good. Can anybody help? Have it 4 hours, nobody has responded, and I didn't respond. Maybe there's somebody now. Yeah. So that's what we have now, and now we're working on a follow-up course called Building AI, where there will be some sort of really sort of entry-level programming, and we're trying to sort of make it a slippery slope. The people have already sort of looked into this and thought about some of the things conceptually, not programming, but conceptually. And of course, as you know, in programming, it's really mostly about problem solving and not the syntax of writing code. So if they now learn a bit of or some Python syntax, then they'll be able to put their sort of conceptual understanding into a piece of code that does something useful, and we hope to sort of hook them and get really inspired by how easy in the end some AI programming is. And not all, but some. We're aiming for spring 2020, where we already promised it last year, but then we had to eat our word. So hopefully we'll get it done. It's in beta testing stage now. But still the goal isn't that even after the follow-up course, people would sort of go and apply for job as an AI developer. It's more like understanding and being able to maybe have better discussions with the kind of the real or the advanced AI developers. So if you've written a piece of code that, for instance, optimizes there's going to be this exercise where there's a cargo ship with pineapples. Doesn't have to be pineapples, but it is. Pineapples shipping from, I forgot, maybe from Brazil to different ports, and it's a traveling salesman problem. You should sort of look for the path that is the least carbon emissions, right? So the shortest path. And if people have written a piece of code that solves that problem, I've seen how people are empowered to say that they stand up more straight when there's a discussion about building some optimization software in their company. I've done this. I did this program, and it wasn't all that hard, and they kind of feel so much more confident about being involved in teams that think about these things, even if they would never be the ones who touch the keyboard. Okay, maybe they're doing their PowerPoints, but they don't do the programming. But they'll still feel much more confident about sort of chipping in those discussions. It's kind of AI literacy, the way I see it. And of course, some of them, I hope they will continue to learn more programming, more like maths, and more like machine learning, like deep expertise. Caterpillar. This might actually make sense, right? What is so fun about expecting a people to be a caterpillar? Caterpillar, right? They're going through a transformation, right? There'll be butterflies, beautiful butterflies in the end. So maybe it's fun if we think our pupils to be in the middle of a transformation. Anyway, so that's one of the few inspirational quotes that makes half sense in my slides. Okay, so this another one that doesn't, or maybe it does. So the way this makes sense, I guess, is that we'd really like now to say that other people should do something similar as well. We don't think even though we're conquering the world, and we're doing translations in all EU languages now with the support of the Finnish government, and we're doing all kinds of sort of discussions outside Europe, and we hope to sort of reach 1% of the global population with this course. So that's pretty big, but I think we need still more monkeys to unite behind this thing, and I hope you agree that the people inside this room is a way too narrow sector of the society to be thinking about hard problems that are related to AI. And I'm not talking about, what is a good prior for neural networks or, these technical problems, but I'm talking about where is the border of privacy, or where does, how do we control the power of these platform companies and things like that. And those discussions need people who understand at least the basics of AI. So that for that cause, I hope you will unite and share this vision. So just to explain, these are AI-generated inspirational quotes from inspirebot.me. You can go there and generate as many of them as you like. Right. So, thank you.
Can you say what was the cost in man-hours for the first launch?
Yeah.
And divided by the way, creating the content and the
everything else.
interface.
Yeah, I can give some ballpark numbers. We didn't really do much of bookkeeping, and of course, it's Reaktor's work is let's say half of the work has been on the Reaktor side, roughly. So it's hard to say. Well, of course, it's hard to say if it's half, right, to begin with. But I get the point. So I think I spent something like equivalent of half a year, full-time equivalent, I would say, in creating the content. But of course, I didn't start from scratch, but still. And then, then there was the technical work, but maybe, so I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 years, full-time equivalent.
Helping creating content?
No, not too much. I mean, we had this. There was a copy editor who looked at the text and said, "Okay, well, this part is really heavy. Maybe you could write something more there." And we had some of the exercises created by the data scientists at Reaktor, but mostly myself. And but then it's really like we did talk about the concept a lot. So I did get like tons of feedback about where it should be going.
How much it costs to maintain, how much time you use?
Right. I maybe use.
That you answer people's complaints.
Yeah. So I don't really use all that much time on that. It's really like when you get the routine, it's really fast. I maybe use something like an hour per week, just like running the discussion forum and checking some of the peer-reviewed exercises that are flagged as problematic. So maybe an hour a week. Now it's been going up because with the EU launch, we got extremely much publicity, and it was like hundreds and hundreds of newspaper articles, and we're getting like 10 times more students now. So it's kind of like really like something.
You already had how many students?
We have 320,000 by now, or 30. I should check it. It's like maybe 10,000 a week more. But now it jumped. There was one day when we got 10,000 a day.
10,000 a week and it's 1 hour work for you, that's not much.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's mostly auto-graded. Only some of them are sort of end up in manual check. And then there's the discussion platform where there's other people discussing.
Yeah. These are excellent questions, but the two of you need to take this offline so that some others have a chance to ask. Any other questions?
What is the most difficult thing in scaling this up?
Well, I mean, it's not that difficult, I guess, in the end, because as I said, we get 10,000 people a week, and it takes me an hour to scan through the. I mean, the other language versions, obviously, I don't speak Estonian or German enough so that I could do that, or Swedish. I guess it's sort of designing the course so that it scales up. So having that part where the students can feel like it's really addressing them personally. And those peer review things are the bits that make it work. I mean, it's not easy to design that peer review system and make it work, but once you've done that, then it scales up. Did Antti have a question?
Yeah, I mean, you didn't mention the word computational thinking, but I see this as an instance of that. And one of the
Yeah.
criticism is that there's no proven evidence that it actually has an impact later on.
You mean computational thinking, like the thinking they teach in schools for kids, like?
Like you would go to a chemistry class and then, one-on-one, and they would, teach you how to think with computation. It's a very broad movement,
Yeah.
I didn't mention that word, and I was wondering what the relationship is.
I don't think I know enough of the philosophy in like what goes under that label.
Instead of coding, you for example, focus on constructs like decomposing problems, abstracting problems,
Yeah.
getting step-by-step solutions.
Right. Yeah, I don't have a strong position on how useful that is in solving problems, for instance. The important thing that I think, the importance of that in this context, I think, is that people understand how these systems are built, how the systems my wife complains that my mother-in-law calls her every week and says, "Did you see that yesterday on Facebook?" And she, even though my mother-in-law, who is 80, has been told multiple times that Facebook is different for every user. And so you can't go to people and say, "Did you say that it was yesterday," right? This story. It's not for other people the same. And understanding these kind of things, I think, is the most important thing. Not sort of be able to decompose their daily tasks in terms of algorithms. But so
AI literacy.
AI literacy, yeah, that's exactly the term. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to end now, but you
Okay.
have